Today's segment of Sound Balming is brought to you by Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Body Care. I cannot express to you how much we love their products. Although we use them all year, as the weather gets colder, we need these products even more. The dreaded drop in temperature, the dryness, the itchiness, and the unnecessary flakiness is inevitable. Shea butter from Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Body Care is the only thing that works for my skin and hair needs. Not only do these products cure my dry skin, the whipped butter goes on smoothly and doesn't leave that uncomfortably thick, sticky residue. Bonus? It smells absolutely amazing. There are so many different scents to choose from too. Not only do they carry skincare products, there are products for authentic living, face, shower, hair and beard, spritzers and perfumes, and bath products. Let me tell you, we cannot even keep the stuff in the studio. The entire production team as well as all our children use Jimmy and Mary's product. Jimmy and Mary's take pride in creating quality, handcrafted products from simple ingredients for the entire family. Their products are made for all skin types and are 100% handmade, 100% vegan, and 100% cruelty-free. Skincare is important. Moisture is key, and keeping our skin and hair hydrated is essential. I cannot emphasize how much we trust Jimmy and Mary's for all of our skincare needs. Hurry on up to jimmyandmarys.com and check out their products. Did I mention service is fast and efficient too? Don't forget to mention that you heard about Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Skincare on Sound Balming. Use the discount code SOUNDBALM20 to get 15% off. That's SOUNDBALM20 for 15% off at Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Skincare.
Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bombs. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is, you are here with me. Welcome. I am Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, the creator of Sound Bombing. And my goal for this show is to introduce you to the people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. Happy day to you, wherever you are and whatever part of the world that you're in. Let's just start by taking a deep breath and say, inhale, exhale. Let's do it one more time. Inhale, exhale. That is called the breath of life. And that says that we are here and you are here with me. Sound bombing community. Most of us at one time or the other have woken up and asked ourselves, if this is all there is to life, do you remember a time in your life when you were fired up about what you were doing, but don't know how to get back there? Are you successful but unfulfilled? Do you still not know what you want out of life? Do you still not know what you want to do when you grow up? I know sometimes I don't know. Well, let me just tell you this. You are not alone. Millions and millions of people are stuck in the rut and don't know what to do. During the pandemic, I was told by one of my great teachers that this is a great time to learn a new craft, learn something new about yourself, and also to give back. Well, let me just tell you today, if you are at that crossroad, you made the right decision to hang out with me today because my next guest is Rich Curtis. Rich is and always have been a guide. Do you hear me? A guide. He has spent over a decade as a raft and mountain guide on the rivers and mountains of the American West and as a real estate entrepreneur. Now he spends his time guiding people through life's inflection points as a best-selling author, story expert, and success coach. Rich guides, coaches, writes, and speaks to help entrepreneurs, CEOs, adventurers, and go-getters just like you to rewrite your stories, to help you get unstuck, and to live your dreams. As a passionate student of the power of story, neuroscience, positive psychology, and behavior psychology, Rich believes in a world where people are invested in the process of being better tomorrow than they are today. His life's work, including his book, Change Your Story, Change Your Life, have been helping people get there. Outside of work, Rich is dedicated. He's a dedicated father of two, a husband, traveler, and outdoor adventurer. But I got something better than that. He is with us today in the Sound Bombing Studios. Rich, welcome to the show. How are you doing? And let our listeners know where you are calling in from.
I'm doing great. That was an amazing intro.
Man, because you are an amazing guy. Have you not heard? I bring people up the right way. I should have been an announcer like at a sporting event and in a game. When I meet people like you who are coming on the show, I can't give them a watered down introduction. Rich, you an adventurer like me, man.
That's right. I'm loving the sound bombing theme. It's like a bunker for healing your soul. I'm happy to be here and be in the bomb shelter with you.
I love that, man. Where are you calling in from? And then how are you doing?
I'm calling from Placerville, California. So I'm right between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe on the beautiful western slope of the Sierras, which is just a mountain town that's a gateway to adventure. So that's why we're here.
Well, it makes sense because you are an adventurer and your adventures have taken you into a different direction where you're inspiring and you're motivating individuals. You have an amazing book out. You're doing amazing things. You're talking about Black Lives Matter. I saw some of your videos. You're talking about the pandemic. You're talking about how to recalibrate your internal GPS. Man, you are doing some amazing things. And one of the things that you and I have in common with several is I love the outdoors and you're really into stories and narratives. And that's where I want to start first. How can we use narratives, Rich, to understand ourselves, others, and the world?
Well, you can think of stories as a programming code for your brain. So if you're going to sit down and program your website right now, you wouldn't type in make the background red, right? You'd type in something in HTML, right? The computer wouldn't know what you're saying. And I think a lot of times we tell people, hey, you need to have a more powerful mindset. You need to change your story, but we don't tell them how. And so stories are the code, the programming code for the brain. We spend about 80% of our day on autopilot because our brain is the most energy hog organ that we've got. So if your brain was actively doing everything all day long, you'd have to sit around and take in as many calories as an elephant to keep that working. So in order to not be doing that, we create these filters and these orders and these patterns for the world so that we can set everything on about 80% autopilot, and our brain's only actively helping us out for 20% of the day. That's great if all those filters and stories are exactly what you want them to be and they're taking you where you want them to take you. But if they're not, then we just get stuck and we don't change it because we're stuck in that autopilot. So we need to get out of the autopilot, get the stories out in front of us where we can see them, and then change them. And if you actively rewrite that narrative and then do the work to reimplant it in your subconscious, then you can change the filters and you change your outcomes. And so that's why story is so powerful, is because it actually helps you change your downstream outcomes because you've changed the filters that you're viewing the world through and that you're taking everything in through.
So I heard you say the stories are powerful. Then how is power related to storytelling?
Well, we have a story that controls everything in our lives. You have a story about who you are, as a podcaster, as an outdoorsman, as an educator, right? You have a story who you are from your racial or ethnic background, who you are as a father. You have all these stories. Some of them serve you and really take you where you want to go. And some of them are really bad stories. And for the most part, we've never taken the time to tell ourselves these stories, to bring them outside of ourselves. So it'd be like you get in the car in the morning and you turn it on and the GPS comes on, it starts taking you somewhere and you just start following it. But you don't know actually where it's going to go. You didn't take the time to look at the destination. So taking the time to tell yourself the stories and then make sure that they are reflective of where you want to go is how you take an active role in pushing your life where you want it to be. Because you've got some really bad stories, we all do, rattling around in the old squirrel cage up here. And until we get them out and start working on them, we can't actively go where we want to go. So most people are living their life that way. They have an internal GPS. It's taking them somewhere. They just don't know where, and they haven't told it where they want it to go. And for me, the most powerful moment in my life where I figured this out was about 2 years after my mom died. I didn't set out to be a self-help author, but my mom passed away suddenly and unexpectedly about 41 days before the birth of my first child. She almost got to meet him, so close. And I, as I said, was a guide. And as a guide, I've had heart attacks, I've had head trauma, I've had broken ribs, I've had everything, you name it, in the backcountry, and been able to bring those people home, which wrote a powerful but not necessarily useful story for me, this sort of guide complex. Nobody dies on my watch, right? And unfortunately for me, my mom had a DNR, a do not resuscitate order, which meant all of that sort of big guy bravado, work on people, fix people stuff, all that narrative I had in my head, I couldn't execute any of that. I had to sit on my hands and support her in the dying process, which is something we're not really well prepared for in the West. We treat death mostly as something to be fought and conquered. And so about 2 years after that, I had a major epiphany. Now, some people have their epiphany maybe sitting on the slopes of the Andes, cuddling a yak, taking ayahuasca. Some people maybe in church with a spiritual leader. For me, I was circling a Costco parking lot in my truck, screaming at my brother on the phone.
Didn't sound too sexy, man. Like Deepak Chopra and Dr. Wayne Dyer. I like yours much better. Yours still seems more real.
Yeah, I'm circling the Costco parking lot. I'm in this argument with my brother who wants me to spend more time with him because he just moved home. And I'm messed up from my mom's death. I'm having a hard time. And I blurted out, I'm failing Ann, that's my wife. I'm failing you. And we failed mom. We didn't fight for her. She fought for all five of us every day of her life. And we just stood there and watched her die. When that story came out, hit me like a ton of bricks. I actually slammed the brakes on the truck, and the little security guard guy who I didn't know who was chasing me in his golf cart almost hit me. And I sat there for a couple of minutes, just stunned by what a powerful and bad story that was that I had inside myself that I didn't know. I did not know that was there. And it had been causing me suffering, pain, depression for 2 years, really going through it in a way I never thought possible. And once I was outside of myself, I thought, whoa. Is that true? So I asked myself two important questions. Is that true? And more importantly, even if it's true, is that serving me? And I was able to go back through the day my mom died and realize that 4 a.m, I brought the DNR to the hospital. I asked her verbally to rescind it, and she said no. She wanted it to stand. And I handed that over, even though I knew what that meant for the day. We got the priest in. She was a devout Catholic, and so we got the priest in to do the final sacrament for her. My dad couldn't cuddle her. The bed rail was in the way. So I got the ICU nurse to bring the bed rail down. The mask was freaking her out. I said, what's that mask doing? They said, it'll extend her life 10 minutes. I said, get that off her face. Let's, make her comfortable. And so I went back to that day and I rewrote that story and realized I fought for my mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die her way. Now, if you just take those two stories, we failed mom. We just stood there and watched her die. And I fought for my mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die. You can see the dramatically different outcomes a story can have in your life. And we're making this stuff up. I wrote both those stories and they're both true. But which one serves me? And
Wow.
that mechanism has so much power. Once you do it once, you can do it with every aspect of your life.
See, we already rolling. My producer said you and Rich are going to enjoy engaging one another because she knows I love great stories. Just recently, just yesterday, Rich, I was talking to a group of teachers about the power of story, and I showed them a clip. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this clip. It's actually called The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Adichie. And in that, it's a TED Talk. I'm a TED speaker. She says the single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete, that they make one story become the only story. Let's unpack that statement right there. What does that statement actually mean to you about what she talks about, the consequence of the single story and how it basically robs people of their dignity? Do we have too many single stories that exist? I know when I watched you talking about Black Lives Matter and you were talking about George Floyd, and you shut down your program for some time. Talk to me about that. I don't know if you've seen The Danger of the Single Story. If you haven't, it's a brilliant TED Talk, but it talks about how we talk about these stereotypes. And I love how she says that the problem with the stereotypes is that they're not untrue, but that they're incomplete. What does that mean to you as a storyteller?
Yeah, well, I think there's so much to unpack there. I mean, one thing to be careful of is when we start getting into talking about people's stories about race, we run into limitations. When you write a book, you've written books, you can fall in love with your own theory and you start applying that to everything. Next thing you know, you're telling your dog he needs to rewrite his story about that dinner you just gave him, right? You're putting your theories where they don't belong. So when it comes to sort of 30,000 foot level institutional racism in the country, I think the description of narrative falls short because there's so many institutional cultural pieces that we need to work on there. But down at that personal level, like she was talking about with stereotype, that's the place where the power of story it can really help people do that work. And the danger of the incomplete narrative. And one of the things, and I don't know if she was diving into the neuroscience of this, but as you and I are speaking right now, there's 11 million bits of information battering you right now per second, 11 million bits. And you can, depending on the study you believe, take in about 40 to 60 of them. So to put that in perspective, average American dictionary has about 1 million letters in it. So if I gave you 11 dictionaries and I said, Lamar, you can pick 40 letters. Of course, you're going to have duplicates. We only got 26 characters. You can pick 40 letters from those 11 million and you write a story about the moment we just had. And I'm going to do the same. The chances that you and I are going to write the same story are functionally zero. And we've seen that in our differences around the pandemic. We've seen that in our differences around race. We've seen that in our differences around politics this year. We are finding an inability to bridge the gap between our incomplete stories. So your story is incomplete, one, because you're using an infinitesimally small amount of the data. Two, because you have an anthropological preset to write the worst stories you can. So there were 15 other hominids roaming around, as you know, that were potential candidates to become us. We survived not because we were the strongest or the best. We survived because we were the scariest and we could cooperate. And so we developed a brain that was great at saying, oh, I heard a crack in the bushes. That's something that's going to kill me. We're going to run, right? Now that there's not, for most of us or a lot of us, something in the bushes that's going to kill us every second, our brain still uses that mechanism and it looks for negative information and negative bits. So if you can trigger somebody's fear response and get them to write an incomplete story, they're going to write the most negative one they can. And when we come to things like, the George Floyd incident, things like that, people are living out these really incomplete and fear-based stories around race that they've taken in their whole lives. And I don't expect to get someone to the point where they can sit down and erase racism from their life by rewriting their story. But maybe I can get them to think for just a minute about the assumption they just made. And I'll give you a great example. The now famous sort of moment where the Trump administration cleared out some protesters from the church for the Bible shoot. There was a picture with a black father with his 2-year-old daughter on his shoulders that were there protesting peacefully for the George Floyd thing. And there was a cop with a tear gas cannon pointed at him. And online, I entered into a discussion where a woman said, well, why would that dad roll up on that cop like that with a kid on his shoulders? And I simply asked, what in the picture gave you the impression that he rolled up on the cop? Because I don't see anything to tell me who rolled up on who. And that's it. I'm not saying you're a racist. I'm just saying our brain makes connections without us taking a minute to say, whoa, why did it make that connection? And if you stop to think for a minute, you'd think, what father on the planet would move towards danger with a child on his shoulders, right? So the most likely scenario is that cop came into his space, right? The most likely scenario is he wants to back away with that child and get away. And that person is actually a civil rights activist in our community who said that. She's someone who's actively engaged in DEI work, but her brain just made an instant connection and just taken a minute to rewrite that story and say, I'm going to write a story not about cops and black men. I'm going to write a story about fatherhood. What does that picture tell me about fatherhood? If you just take a step to do that yourself, then that's just an incredible amount of change that we can put in the world just doing that work.
Man, Rich, you nailed so many different things. I'm trying to figure out which direction I want to go in. I want to come back to, because I'm thinking about the image of the guy with the child. I can go there because I know what that image is, but I want to go a little deeper. I want to go back to the brain piece because people know I'm such a nerd. I'm like a hip hop nerd. One breath, I'm playing some hip hop like crazy. Another breath, I'm researching brain development, things like that. That's why I love the dichotomy of the world that we live in. But I want to go back to this brain piece. You talked about brains and brain development when it comes to telling stories. Why are our stories such an effective means of reprogramming our brains for happiness and success? And then Or if you prefer, how can we use stories to then reprogram our brains and improve our outcomes in life?
Yeah, the story again is that programming code for the brain. And so when you find an area of your life that's not working, so if you're struggling in your career, or if you're struggling with your fitness, or if you're struggling with your children, you're struggling with your spouse, you have a story about that, right? And that story is creating the outcomes you currently have. And the reason story is so powerful is because you can reach into the deepest, oldest part of your brain and program and alter it that way. There's a great researcher, Mary Helen Imerdino Yang, down in LA, who does research on how inspiring stories affect our brain. And what she's found is when we tell someone an inspiring story, or even just an impactful story like the one about my mom, if we look at their brains on an fMRI machine, 3 different areas are going to light up, right? The midbrain, which isn't doing too much in our scenario, the insula, which is a left and right 2 portions of the brain, which control your gut function. That's why you actually kind of have that gut feeling, or will get that tingling sensation when you hear an inspiring story. But the most interesting part is that the medulla lights up, which is a little spot down at the base of your brainstem, which is the survival center of your brain. If you take a hit there, a big enough hit, they can't even keep you, alive for more than 15 minutes on life support. This is the thing that keeps you breathing when you're asleep, that controls your blood pressure. It's in charge of the core biological survival functions. Now, you would think evolution would have created an impenetrable firewall around that, right? You would think we'd protect that at all costs. But all I got to do is tell you an inspiring story, and I can light that up in you. I can watch on an fMRI machine your brain get changed at the neural level by my story. So if I can do that with an inspiring story, imagine what you're doing to yourself at the biological survival level in your brain by telling yourself these horrible stories. I'm not good enough. I'm a terrible athlete. I'm a bad dad. I'm never going to amount to anything. The world isn't prepared for me. The path to success wasn't meant for people like me. All these bad stories that we tell ourselves, they're hurting us at the neural level, at the biological center of our brain. So when you reach in and you tweak that and you inspire that and you change that from something that doesn't serve you to something that serves you, you can make these major, major leaps forward.
So let's talk about, how do we make those leaps, Rich? How do I then go from rewriting one of my bad stories to changing it from a bad to a good story? What is that process like? What questions should I be asking myself? And what are some things that I should be doing to actually do that? Because the reality is, you can always look at things, the water, the glass half empty, the glass half full. But a lot of people come from this deficit model. I put my research hat on. I was a professor at Johns Hopkins, and I sit in these rooms, Rich, with these deficit researchers. And I'm like, no, I know a group of kids who are doing the total opposite. I know a group of teachers who are doing the total opposite, but many of them are coming from the deficit model. Walk us through what it means to rewire or rewrite those bad stories so we can shift our lives.
Yeah, again, I think I think the self-help industry is a little complicit often in letting people sort of rename and keep their problems, and they don't like to tell people it's hard work, because telling people it's hard work doesn't sell books. But the truth is, you got to put in the work. So the story evolution process that I teach in the book, it's simple. It's not rocket science, but you do have to put in the work. So the first step is to identify an area of your life that you're not satisfied with. Like I said, that might be your career. For me, it was dealing with my mom's death, recovering from grief, and tell yourself that story, right? Get it out, put it on paper, write it down. You have to physically have it outside yourself where you can see it, because that's been a part of you for a long time. So you need to take it out if you want to get rid of it. Then you're going to evaluate that story and ask yourself 2 important questions, which we've already talked about. Is that story true? And even if it's true, does that story serve me? In my case, with my mom's story, the answer was no and no. It's not true, and it's definitely not serving me. It's killing me. So then I ask people to say it out loud. And a lot of people want to skip this step because it feels weird and it feels uncomfortable. But I actually tell them, set up your cell phone and record yourself and say it out loud, because you're going to see on your face, in your facial expressions, the parts that hurt, the parts that don't work for you. You're going to see that pain. The best example of this was my 7-year-old, loves school, real bright kid, and he's been doing the distance learning thing. And he came away from it one day and said, "Dad, I hate school." And you could just see it. And I videotaped him saying it. I said, "Look at this, Grayson. Look at yourself. Does that seem like that's how you really feel? Does that look like that's doing something good for you?" He says, "No, I look terrible, Dad." And the truth is, he doesn't hate school. He loves school. He misses what he knew to be school. So I worked him through this process, and he rewrote that story into, I don't like Zoom, but I love school, and I still get a chance to hang out with my friends and teachers and learn. And what was crucial about that is a crucial step in rewriting your stories is making sure it's still true. We can't batter away the truth with positivity, right? Like the pop psychology, just get positive about everything. That doesn't work in the real world for people with real problems. So it still had to be true for him. Zoom sucks. There's no doing school on Zoom sucks. So yeah, dude, just say Zoom sucks. That's the truth. It's okay, right? But here's the good part too. So you're going to refill that story with better bits of information. You're going to actively pick the 40 bits you're going to put into that story, and you're going to make them the best possible bits you can. So once you say it out loud and you can see that, you can see what hurts, then you're going to start the rewriting process, and you're going to just write it out step by step and change it as you go. You're going to mark each spot in that story that didn't work. So when I said, we didn't fight for mom, we just stood there and watched her die, I checked off on my page, we didn't fight for mom, and we just watched her die. And then I rewrote those pieces, and it's an iterative process. And when you get to the point where it really feels good, where it really feels right and true for you, then the work begins. That was the easy part. The work is reimplanting this in your subconscious, because you've had this story in you for a long time. So when you get triggered, when someone mentions my mom's death, instantly the I didn't fight for her story comes up, unless I do the work. And it takes minimum 30 days, 60 to 90 days or better of telling yourself that story at least 2 times a day. Write it up and put it up somewhere where it's appropriate in the house where you can see it and you'll be reminded of it. And then the crucial step is activating your social support network around that story. So I was hiding, and it is a whole nother conversation about men and grief and how terribly we deal with grief, but nobody knew. Nobody knew what I was going through. And I can guarantee you, if you look around you, if someone's chest is rising and falling, they're suffering. And people don't like to engage with that word. In fact, I had that in the title of the book, and it got so much negative response from people. I'm not suffering, that I ended up having to take the word suffering out of the title. But people they're suffering. And so if you share with them that you were suffering, here was my bad story, take them out when it's appropriate and we can do this again. Take them out for a beer or coffee. Tell them, man, I had this really bad story. Here's my new one. So you're making that now a part of your lived oral tradition. You do that for 30, 60 to 90 days. You actually put in the work. And now whenever I talk about my mom or her death, it's the I fought for my mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die her way story that comes up. The other one only comes up for the purposes of having a conversation with somebody like you. And so that's the soup to nuts. That's the process. And it does take a little bit of work, but I guarantee if you do it once, it's a muscle. You build that muscle. Next time you're struggling with something, you'll just get in the habit of asking yourself, what's my story about this? And you'll start tuning and tweaking that story right away. And once that happens, once that becomes part of your automatic experience, then you're really upcycling, leveling up your success.
Well, I appreciate the transparency about you sharing the story of your mom and how your story started to shift. There's a lot of people right now, Rich, who's dealing with a lot of grief because of COVID. Some people it's hitting them indirectly. Some people it's hitting them directly. It's hitting you and I directly because we have children. We have young children who are in school, and our children may be healthy, but the reality, physically healthy, but mentally they're dealing with some other stuff. So I appreciate you being transparent about your mother and how that shift, how you shifted when you shifted your brain. Speaking of a shift, because we know shift happens, right? As my friend Jennifer Power says. I know in researching you also do some work in the field of positive psychology. Now, let's talk about that. Is positive psychology just about making people feel happy, or is positive psychology the same as positive thinking? Because some people are like, oh, we just want you to feel good, want you to feel positive. You have some speakers who are like, oh, I'm for this, I'm against that. This positive, this thinking, thinking and changing your mindset changes things around you. Talk to me about positive psychology and what that means to you.
Yeah, I think at its root, I think positive psychology and positive thinking have gotten conflated in the popular lexicon now. Mm-hmm. And so I think people are starting to have this knee-jerk, almost negative reaction to it's like positive psychology, positive thinking is just another thing on your health to-do list, right? Like, I got to brush my teeth for a minute a day. I got to eat healthy. And now I got to be happy and grateful about every darn thing that happened. If I stub my toe or drop a brick on my head, I got to be happy about it or I'm wrong, right? And I think that's what happens a little bit when the practice of something gets taken out of the science and into the public. And those two things get disconnected. So at its core, positive psychology is actually just the belief that we will do more good for people by researching the positive outliers, the people who are successful, than we will by researching pathologies and problems, right? And so the more we look at people as a complex list of pathologies and problems, the more we create people that have more pathologies and problems. And the more we look at people who are doing it right and doing it well and try to spread their habits and spread what's going on in their brains, the more we can bring everybody up. So at its root, that's what positive psychology is. And positive thinking.
Go ahead, keep going. Mm-hmm.
Positive thinking is great if you're using it the right way. And when we get hit with something like the pandemic, people can tend to try to use positive thinking to batter away negative emotions. And if you do that, then it becomes compartmentalism, right? Like stoicism is great. You can learn some great things from the Stoics, but if stoicism, which it often does in men, becomes compartmentalism, then eventually you fill a box so full it blows up. Right. And so those negative emotions are coming for you, and they're coming for you in a bigger, badder way if you batter them away with positivity. So the key is to use positive thinking to give you those better bits of information to write better stories, but not to force you away from sitting with the bad. The pandemic is horrible. The loss of life has been tragic. The mental health effects on our kids are awful. Nobody gets to tell you that you need to positive away those emotions, those feelings. You got to be able to sit with those. You got to be able to work through those. And then pick the positive bits of information to create a story from that to move forward. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. So a follow-up to that is, so do you feel is the science of positive psychology descriptive or prescriptive? Or in other words, are we trying to tell people how they should actually live?
Yeah, I think in its best form, it's telling people how they should begin to think about living. So it's telling people to look at what's good and what's right and emulate and model that, and not get mired down in what's wrong or what's broken. I think, I work as a coach, and one of the sort of fundamental commitments we make in working with people is that you are a whole and healthy individual, and I, as your coach, am a whole and healthy individual, and we are meeting and we're collaborating as two whole and healthy individuals to walk alongside each other and move forward, right? But if I approach you like you're broken, then I've already created a power dynamic in the situation, and I've already created a negative position to move forward from. And so I think it's important to, in its best form, positive psychology is telling people to stand in a positive place and move forward with positive habits.
Well, I know as a coach, you have many tools that you use, but one of the more popular tools that you have is your book, Change Your Story, Change Your Life. What was the inspiration for writing that book, and what should people expect? As I see the book right behind you, what should people expect once they put the book down?
The inspiration for writing the book was my recovery from the death of my mom. I'm generally a pretty happy person. That was the first time in my life I had ever really struggled with depression and grief. And I got to the point where I sat on the side of the bed one morning and I felt fat and tired and exhausted and deflated. And I actually had this thought for the first time in my life: is this all there is? Is this all I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And that scared the heck out of me. And that was a bit to get happy again. So the rewriting your story piece was one core piece. And then these 4 daily habits I put together to create the right neurochemical environment in the brain for happiness, because happiness is actually more formulaic than we think it is. If you're looking for resilient happiness, if your concept of happiness isn't just sort of giggling and laughing and having a great time all the time, but your concept of happiness is being able to flourish and move forward, you can achieve that by creating the right neurochemical environment in the brain, as long as you don't have these stories holding you back. And so what people can expect when they put the book down is that they will have learned to identify and rewrite the stories that are holding them back and clear those out, and that they will have learned these 4 habits that they can work into their day in any which way they like, that will create the optimum neurochemical environment in their brain to have happiness. And the book let's
reiterate those habits. And let's talk about those habits again, those 4 core habits.
Yeah. So the first is getting 8 hours of sleep a night. Now you're a dad and I'm a dad, so that one's out the window to some degree. Like my kid was having nightmares all night last night. I'm on about 4 hours sleep, but you do the best you can. And it's important for people to know the reason for these things too, because again, I don't want to add things to people's health to-do list. I want them to understand why this helps. So your amygdala, which is sort of your angry buddy with his Ed Hardy t-shirt at the bar, ready to punch somebody out. That is mediated, by your your prefrontal cortex, and those two get disconnected after you miss a night of sleep. So your prefrontal cortex is kind of your mild-mannered accountant buddy who tells him, "Hey, chill out. Let's not punch anybody tonight," right? If you miss one night of sleep, there's a disconnect between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala, and you now have a 60% greater anger response to negative stimuli. So you're angrier with your wife, you're angrier with your kids, you're angrier with people at work. All your outcomes get worse, and anger is it's hard to hold the emotions of happiness and anger at the same time. So sleep is a big one. And then getting 30 to 45 minutes cardiovascular exercise a day. This one basically releases all the same chemicals in your brain that all of the antidepressant drugs would do. And in fact, there's studies like the Duke Smile study that have shown that you have equal positive outcomes in people moving forward from diagnoses of major depression with the group that took Zoloft and the group that just did 45 minutes of exercise a day. Now, I want to be clear, if you're struggling right now, if you're hurting, if you've been having thoughts of harming yourself, going for a jog isn't going to cut it. You need to call, you need to get help right now. You and your family deserve you to get some real medical help. But if you're just dealing with the general case of the Mondays, if you're just dealing with a little bit of pandemic blues, consistently getting these 30 to 45 minutes of exercise a day will help. So now you've gotten 8 hours of sleep. So you're keeping your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala working to calm you down. You've got all the chemicals dumped into your brain to create a happy environment. And then you want to do at least 10 minutes of mindfulness or meditation a day. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to not just help you pattern your world for the positive, but it thins out over time the tissue in the amygdala. So if you're getting your sleep, you've now tamped down your anger response in the amygdala by 60%. And then lifelong meditators actually thin out that tissue so you have less mass of your brain to fire up towards negative stimuli. So the reason your buddy who meditates all the time is so calm is literally because his brain reacts wildly differently to negative stimuli than yours does, because he's thinned out the tissue in that negative portion of the brain. And then the final one is a daily gratitude practice. And I know, if you Google gratitude, everybody on the planet has told you to be grateful and write down 3 things you're grateful for every day. And you're probably like, man, I'm turning off the podcast right now. I'm done with hearing about gratitude.
And it's unfortunate because we all have something to be grateful for. It's real. It's very, very basic, from just opening your eyes. Like I send a level of gratitude when I'm running past a person who's in a wheelchair, when I'm when I'm driving past someone who's on the bus stop, or, when I'm driving past someone who's in an accident. So we all have something to be grateful for, and it doesn't cost anything. Just taking that moment to pause.
Yeah. And I think the 2 things that get lost with gratitude are the actual practice of it. So just noting something you're grateful for is good, because that will start to pattern your world for the positive. It trains your brain, instead of looking for those negative bits of information, to look for positive bits of information. So just practicing gratitude will actually help you write better stories long term. But the more important piece is actually mustering up the feeling of gratitude. And I think as gratitude has gotten sort of so pervasive, we've missed this piece. So when you write down the 3 things you're grateful for, if you're saying, I'm grateful for my daughter and my son, and close your eyes and try for at least 10 seconds. You want to try to get up to 30, but if you can at least do it for 10 seconds to feel that feeling of being gratitude, to actually get the feeling in you and sit with that feeling. And then you move on. I'm grateful that my body is working today, right? If that's what you're grateful for, sit and actually muster up the feeling, because it's getting that feeling into your body that's going to release the happiness inducing chemicals, and that's going to sort of supercharge that sense of well-being and that sense of looking for positive bits of information. I think that getting the feeling and sitting with it peace gets a little lost. But the synergy of these 4 together, and this isn't like a morning routine. I don't care when you do it. I end up sprinkling these, all throughout the day and just get them done by the end of the day. But all of a sudden you've tamped down your anger responses. You've dumped a bunch of, dopamine and serotonin into your brain. You're looking for better bits of information. You're thinning out the tissue that gets you anxious and makes you angry. And you do these consistently over time, and you find that you've just got this sort of calm and centered, resilient version of happiness that we're all looking for and chasing with our external circumstances, but all the work is here and in you. And you can do these things in as little as an hour a day if you're really busting them out, and they'll make a huge difference. And I can tell you, gratitude is what saved me from the grief of the death of my mom. And mindfulness is what has saved me during the pandemic. So each of these at different moments in your life may be the go-to tool for the struggles you're facing.
Well, they're my go-to. My mantra is when you win the morning, you win the day. And so I start out with the level of opening my eyes, just saying, I just want to thank you, Creator, Spirit, One, whatever I want to call that in that day. Definitely have a gratitude journal. I make my bed. I do it. It's like a walking meditation. Then I do a prayer and a meditation. And I'm really into the Calm app. I've really gotten into the Calm app. There's several apps out there that people decide to use. But I'm going to tell you this, Rich, when I don't do one of those things, my day is like, it's strange. It's like, now it's like when you leave your phone, like people can leave a kid at the mall, but leaving your phone, Rich, is like sin right now. If you leave your phone. So when I leave out one of my rituals, I sort of feel like I left my phone somewhere I need to run back to get it. So I'm the same way. And it's interesting. I'm reading more as an educator. Typically I used to read books on education, but now what I'm discovering, Rich, I'm really reading books on people and relationships and how we better engage and one another. And two of the magazines that I love is Inc. Magazine and Fast Company. And every year, twice a year, they do a piece called the most innovative and they get most highly productive people. So they have some people that are famous, some people you may know, some people I may know, or some people that people may not know, but they call them the most highly productive people. I'm glad they don't say success, because that's a word that people throw around a lot. But what I've discovered, that all of these people, from LeBron James to astronauts to CEOs to people running nonprofit organizations, they all have a meditation and a gratitude practice. And so what I do know is success leaves clues. And speaking of clues, how can my listeners get a copy of your book, and how can they reach out to you if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the book's on Amazon in any format you want, print, ebook, or audiobook read by me. So you can hear it my way if you want. So just search Change Your Story, Change Your Life, Rich Curtis, and you'll find that. It's the blue and yellow one. And then if you want to get in touch with me, we do a lot with Rich Curtis Coaching, with speaking, with group coaching, with private coaching, and just putting out like those videos you saw, just information to help people move forward. You can check that out at richcurtis.com.
Rich,
RICHCURTIS.com.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Rich.
Oh, RICHCURTIS.com.
And what are your final thoughts that you can leave with our amazing bomb shelter listeners? What do you got to say for them? Final thoughts.
For me, I believe that the quality of our life is directly proportional to the questions we ask and the stories we tell ourselves. And the questions you ask will lead you to writing better stories. So if you just start with that, if you're struggling right now, just start with asking yourself some powerful questions. Why am I struggling? What is my story about this? Is it true, and does it serve me? And that's it. Use the questions to guide you to the better stories, and you'll upcycle your results pretty quickly.
Well, Rich, I hope I ask you some amazing questions, but part 2, the questions get deeper. Part 2 is sponsored by Mountain Made. Rich, are you ready? This is called the Super Bomb Questions. You ready, brother?
All right, send it.
All right, let's go. What is your favorite word?
Hootenanny.
What's your favorite quote, Bible verse, scripture verse, song lyrics to a song?
My favorite quote is by famous surfer Doc Paskowitz. Health is more than the mere absence of disease. It is the presence of a superior state of well-being, a pizzazz, a vitality that has to be worked for each and every day of your life. You cannot get it in a bottle or from Dr. Phil. It's got to be gotten through diet and exercise and rest and recreation and attitudes of mind, working all together every day of your life.
I love it. What's your superpower?
What's my superpower? Oh man. I think if you asked my kids, they would say my superpower is telling them what to do. But no, I think my superpower is always
the superpower is if they listen to you. That's the superpower. Not telling them what to do, but do they listen to you?
That's right. Getting better every day. But I would say my superpower is being a guide. As soon as I learn something, I want to teach it and walk people forward with me. I get a lot of value out of moving forward with a community, being better tomorrow than we are today. So I think my superpower is really taking a concept that I find that makes my life better and then getting it out there in the simplest form. And that's what I try to do with all of this. That's the impetus behind all the book, the coaching, all of it.
What's your spirit animal?
I'd say the dog for sure.
What brings you to tears of joy?
Oh man, seeing my kids succeed or be helpful, like just little things. My son yesterday, he loves that when you make a melty sandwich in the sandwich press, you get that like brown burnt cheese on the side. He loves that. And I scraped a pile off of it and gave it to him. And he walked straight out the back door and took the biggest part of the pile and handed it to his 3-year-old sister. And that, I got choked up seeing that, because you feel like you're raising a good human who recognizes that they got to take care of the little ones, you know, and so that stuff like that.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
Oh, always more time with the family. So I tell my wife all the time that when I take my last breath on this planet, I'm going to wish for nothing more than one more minute with her, one more minute with my son, one more minute with my daughter. So all of my life and even my approach to entrepreneurship, I'm not looking for yachts and airplanes. I'm looking for a good quality life with the maximum amount of time with my family. I think losing my mom made me acutely aware that time is our primary currency. So I'm always looking for any way I can eke out some more time with the family.
What guides your heart?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately in relation to how people have responded to COVID or the other things we've faced this year. And I was raised in a Catholic household. I'm not Catholic myself at this moment, but a core value there was having a servant's heart, was helping. And so we teach our kids, if you can help, help. And so I think what really feeds my heart and my soul is being able to help in some way, feel helpful, feel like I'm being of value.
Rich Curtis, if you were in the Mr. America talent competition, what would your talent be?
Oh man. I think I've done so much outdoor stuff. I don't have your usual talents, but I'd probably tell a few off-color jokes and hope it didn't get me thrown out.
No. Well, Rich Curtis, the author of Change Your Story, Change Your Life. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. I love to hear how you talk about your family and how you are living your life based on how your mother raised you. So I respect and I appreciate everything that you shared with us today. And I want you all to go out and check out Rich, check out his website. He's doing some amazing things. Brother, thanks for hanging out with me today in the bomb shelter.
Thank you so much. Had a wonderful conversation, had a lot of fun, and great learning from you today too, Lamar. Thanks for having me on.
And I could not do this without my super duper producer, Nicole Klimpaka, Supremacy for our theme music, my engineer, Alexander Blanc. But for all of you for listening, make sure you subscribe, go to every place, because we're in every place. Leave a comment, stop being stingy, and share me with everybody. If you want to know more about me, you can visit drdrlds.com. And as always, believe that something wonderful is about to happen, but some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. But not you. Thanks for tuning in. And you've been listening to Sound Bombing. And go out and do something for someone other than yourself today. Peace.
The Super Bomb questions are brought to you by Mountain Made CBD. Mountain Made is changing the CBD game by offering a line of high-dose CBD tablets at an affordable price. Their products are THC-free and third-party tested for accuracy, cleanliness, and potency. Their products, which ship nationwide, include Build for CBD saturation, Boost for precision titration, and Recover for rest and rehab. With 9 years experience in hemp and fitness, Mountain Made's founders are focused on creating a quality product to help those who live an activated lifestyle. Check out mountainmade.life. Again, that's mountainmade.life to find out more about how their products can help you crush life. Remember, their products ship nationwide. Go check out their website today and follow them on social media at Mountain Made. That's the @ MNTMADE. Our staff at Sound Balming uses Build before a morning workout, which helps to push our bodies to a whole new level on a daily basis. Try Build, try Boost, try Recover. Our staff is using these products to enhance our active lifestyle naturally, and we are crushing life with Mountain Made CBD, and you can too. Start today by going to mountainmade.life and ordering Build, Boost, Recover, or the multitude of other products that they have which will enhance your lifestyle. I promise you, you won't regret it.